Dear audience, a while ago I was fixated by a group of artists active in Japan just after the war under the collective name Gutai. I think in a lot of ways they connected with stuff I was thinking about and making. At the time anyway, like probably in 2010, dealing with old materials in new ways, something to do with the body, etc. This group was originally based in the city of Ashiya, just a short distance from my wife's hometown of Kobe. So then, in 2012, I went to Ashiya's art museum with my in-laws to dig around in their archive, unearthing a heap of photos, programs, films, journals, and documents straight from the source. But as happens, we came home, I got older, my interest in Gutai faded a bit. Apparently, they were featured in Life magazine in April 1956, accompanied by their official manifesto. Here's a bit of it. The fact that the ruins receive us warmly and kindly after all, and that they attract us with their cracks and flaking surfaces, could this not really be a sign of the material taking revenge, having recaptured its original life? Flash forward then, and in June this year, this memory was reignited whilst delving into the Modern Art Oxford archive, discovering that the 1985 and 6 show Reconstructions Avant-Garde in Japan, 1945 to 1965, featured a number of works by Gutai artists. One individual involved with the group, Subaru Murakami, was born in Kobe. His most famous work involved breaking through a sheet of paper. And you can see on screen a jumbled bunch of performances of this from the 1970s to more or less present day. They're not in chronological order. It's a piece which keeps getting reanimated as it can be realized in a whole panoply of ways. Apparently, this performance was inspired by Murakami's 3-year-old son breaking through a Japanese paper screen. It's hard for me to imagine doing that as a 3-year-old. But in 1986, when I was 3, my future uncle-in-law moved from Kobe to Oxford to study for several years at Pembroke College, just across the road, literally 1 minute's walk from where we are now. Perhaps he came to the Reconstruction show. He can't remember. It was a long time ago, I guess. 31 years older, and thinking about the performance that happens tonight, however, I was drawn to a different work of Murakami's that appeared in Reconstructions, a fairly simple wooden box that prompted gallery goers to press their ears to the top of the simple wooden box, to the top surface and listen. Inside the box was an alarm which sounded at infrequent and random intervals. It was notable for being the only work not to be shipped to Oxford, but reconstructed, according to the artist's specifications. But of course, following the show, it was then destroyed, the end, etc. Or not. This shouldn't be seen as a destructive act, rather just a crocodilian shedding of skin, part of the work's life cycle. Since its birth, that box has appeared in numerous shows, in numerous countries, in numerous variations. With or without alarms, painted, varying in sizes, with different instructions, outside, inside, the list goes on and on and on and on, etc. Then is a reconstruction, a sort of fantastical extrapolation of the work by Murakami and of the artist's correspondence with the gallery, the history of a work made, remade, unmade, destroyed over the decades. A production history that feels more like a genealogy, an object that's tenuously and inexplicably tied up with my own biography. This isn't a piece of Gutai art. It's more like making something new from the remnants of an old manifesto, or a memory of something I've never experienced, a reincarnation, I guess. Or maybe I'm just kicking around the discarded planks of a workmanlike old crate, etc., etc., etc. Yours sincerely, Neil Luck, 1st of September 2016.
sitting comfortably? Maybe somebody already asked you that like 30 years ago when I was about 4 years old. But let me reframe that. Were you sitting comfortably in, say, 1986? Because even like 3 decades ago, the focus of our attention tonight, the proverbial object was very much, very much from the distant past, or seemed like it might be from the distant past, I suppose. Or kind of at least sort of will be from the distant past. But basically, imagine you designed the sort of proto-object. Sorry, by that I mean like the object, like the original, authentic object that went on to form kind of the basis for everything that came after it. Kind of a fantasy idea, really. But
reality check.
Yeah. Okay. So reality check. It did actually happen, but in 1956. Okay, it's the distant past. So something was made, and I'll now kind of explain how it could be remade in the future or even the present, i.e. not just in sort of 3 dimensions, but in kind of 4 or 5 or something like that. Okay, this will become kind of relevant much later. Okay, sorry, let me clarify. So this is the sound of its own making a box would have made in 1956. So kind of very woody sound, very authentic. You can hear the grain there, like it's raw, untamed, untapped manufacture. You know, it's Okay, just remember this pattern, because it's an idée fixe across this whole span we're talking about. A kind of allegory for your own bodily clock ticking in a grim dirge of a Degenerando. It's it's a little bit confusing. I mean, let's start again. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so when dealing with kind of original pure objects, the rub is sort of always porterage, not just in spatial dimensions, but kind of in more expanded fields too. Ergo, this is a narrative really about moving forwards in both space and time, kind of on all the available axes, I suppose. But it's, yeah.
Welcome to the future.
Okay, so we step forward in the narrative somewhat, but essentially a kind of an original thing was created in 1956 and became too expensive 30 years later to move from point X to point Y, i.e.
Correspondence 1.
18th of March, 1985.
Dear Mr. X,
Following your telephone conversation of 4th of March with
Mrs. Z.
I'm very pleased that you are able to agree to the reconstruction of
Work.
1956. We will be in touch with you to finalise details in May or June this year.
Yours sincerely.
Mr. Y.
Okay, so now in the present day, imagine it's the 1980s, of course, this is what the sound of its own making, a box, really would make. It's crap, of course. I mean, that's really bad, but you have to excuse me. That's kind of what I imagine, I suppose, a box in 1985 may have sounded like if it was reimagining something from 1956. I think it's all, yeah. Let's bring this back again and, yeah, simplify it a little bit. So, yeah, okay. So in this physical world, okay, an object exists on a kind of an X, a Y, and a Z axis, but there are other dimensions, like time and...
Reality check.
Okay, sorry, it's hard to kind of remember and repeat all this stuff because it's complicated, but it's something about expression and age and okay. Yeah, so this is a problem when repeating or trying to remember stuff verbatim. Like your old stupid corporeal body will get older, remember, etc. But like maybe in the future things will get a little bit better. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So welcome. So that is a big step forward, and maybe kind of a huge one. So let's kind of rein it back in again, kind of, and force it into an allegory, really, about aging and deterioration, away from this sort of perverse obsession with kind of an object, a box. Let me put it another way. Okay, so is this kind of more authentic than this, or have kind of more verisimilitude than something like this, or even this? Or does this kind of sincere tangle of ticks right now, this, all that kind of rubbish, does that kind of like possess more veracity than something real similar from ages ago? Or, yeah, or something I reckon might happen much later? I don't know, but let me give a practical demonstration. Okay, so we have a kind of normal object which does exist on kind of an X and a Y and a kind of vertical Z-axis, and that's kind of fine most of the time because it sort of works, you know, you can do something with it, like it functions, but there's kind of stuff beyond that really, kind of in more, less kind of conventional imaginary dimensions where as soon as you kind of work in more kind of diagonal perspectives, kind of more possibilities become and there's an allegory here about kind of the development of things in general, like stuff gets more complicated or stuff becomes reiterated in kind of new forms. And I think it's important to kind of bear these kind of imaginary dimensions in mind because it tells us something about ourselves, maybe kind of like about what the future and development. Like, for instance, like this is much more interesting than this, but only in kind of maybe a sort of futuristic, non-sensible kind of way. But really, there's anything that kind of be learned from this. It's that we shouldn't disregard kind of like the potential for future development in these kind of dimensions. I think like I suppose reality check. Maybe it's better to stick to the facts for a while. Anyway, yeah. Okay, start again. So, anyway, an object is or was reconstructed, and I'll come clean, right? It was an art object, i.e., something that's subjectively, useless. So, I mean, this could have described anything really. It could have, it could describe something like a guitar. That's reasonable. You know, all this kind of, X, Y, Z, I dimension, these kind of dimensions or that, that's fine, but it's kind of too easy, really. So we've learned that objects tend to progress basically from like an abstract state, through to something kind of much more concrete, and then kind of on into the future. But currently we're very much in the concrete era, which is fine, because that's kind of what we like as humans, isn't it? Something like this, basically. That's nice, isn't it? Okay, so thank you. Right, so this is an abstract voice,
Mr. Y.
right at the start of its lifespan, and here's a kind of more concrete voice, which is bang up to date.
Mr. Y.
I.e.
Dear Mr. Y.
I received your letter last month. Then I'm willing to do anything for you about work. Please bring.
Yours sincerely, your sincere,
your sincerely.
Mrs. Z.
Okay, so you might have thought, or think that this is the end, the beginning, or the middle, or the grand finale. Okay, right. I just.
Welcome to the future.
Okay. let's calm down for a moment and just get some perspective about all of this. So this is useful. This is the future. So we've come from a very original, raw state of, unedited materials and progressed through a concrete era to something like this, which is a sort of imaginary, synthesized future, I suppose. And there's something it's bound up in this object fiction, but maybe this is the future. Objects aren't objects; they're object expressions, or they're object songs, or something like that. I mean, maybe it's useful to bring it back to this central metaphor of the human body again. So, this could be my voice, right?
Hey!
Yeah, but there's a sad question mark over the sentiment. So you've got to work hard on.
Stave off the...
No.
Stave off
No.
Stave
Yeah.
off deterioration.
Stave off deterioration. So there's a 20th century kind of
philosophical theory that says an object is.
So it's a 20th century philosophical theory that says an object is the core object, kind of ultimately progresses, like we've seen, from the abstract to the concrete. That's kind of set in stone, right? It's rubbish, actually, because, spoiler alert, there is actually a phase beyond that, i.e.
Dear Mrs. X,
We have particular instruction that you can't be allowed to make good
work.
And we're probably allowed to make some manliness. One thing we won't destroy it or give it future use. Please let us know.
Sincerely, you're all sincerely, yours.
Mr. I.
Okay, spoiler alert, it did actually get destroyed. And you can read that as an allegory for your own inevitable decline. Equals an unhappy ending.
This is what the sound of its own.
Look, that's not actually the end. The reality is there is a future. Progression from the abstract through to the concrete, onto the imaginary. But let me reiterate that, because the future can exist in what we know as the imaginary dimension, right? So, this is your reality. This is the future we've laid out for ourselves. This is the final expression. This is what the sound of its own making a box would make. So, kind of uncanny. It has a root in that raw, authentic, woody sound, but it's synthesized into something new, something exciting and much richer and complex. It says something about where we're headed. It's almost lyrical. It's almost a song. It's beautiful. It's always bad manners, though, to leave anything unanswered or open to interpretation. So here are the blueprints.
This is what the sound of
It's protoform, 1956, simple style, classic, Murakami, important, weighty, medium box and clock, open to interpolation in two main pieces, authentic, material, value.
This is what the sound of
Conceptual, non-conceptual, durable over time. Catalogue number 29. Yeah, made entirely in Oxford.
This is what the
I'm 15.
This is what
The hyperreal perspective, 180 cubic centimeters, aged beautiful, originally no internal components, rugged and workmanlike, developed over time, real art aesthetic, deep.
This is what the sound. This is what.
Previously in Amsterdam, Stedelijk, passed to future dimensions, all the planes, born in 1925, Axis.
This is what the sound.
Cedar construction, anti-material in memory, popular. Easy to grasp, radical carpentry, important to...
This is what. This is what the sound.